to do what it takes to return some semblance of decency to the society. Chuck Lessin is the vice chairman of the Virginia-Israel Advisory Board, and he's also the president of the Knesset Beth Israel Synagogue in Richmond. Chuck, let me ask you what you thought about the protests yesterday, and then we'll pivot over to Prime Minister Netanyahu's remarks. But what did you think when you were watching this unfold yesterday? Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, John. I was saddened, like I believe most Americans were saddened, as you have just remarked, that we all understand that you have the right to burn an American flag, but most Americans don't want to see that. And I really caution most Americans to really make the comparison between 3,300-year-old anti-Semitism, which has really just ravished the Jewish people since our existence, and compare that to the recent hatred of America. It's really a new phenomenon, John. You know, since the inception of our beautiful America, people maybe envied us and maybe even feared our massive military. But I don't think most around the world hated us until the 1979 revolution in Iran, where the mullahs expressly said they were going to export revolution around the world. And while that may seem dramatic now, that is what we are witnessing. And what saddens me more than anything is that 35 members of one of our major political parties walked out on a speech yesterday. They didn't burn those flags, those 35 Democrats, but they certainly sympathize with the people that burned those flags and that shouted death to America. We really better wake up, and it comes from our leadership. So if we have leaders who are tacitly supporting these protests and telling people that it's okay to hate America and that it's really good and it's your obligation to go out and burn the flags and hate America, well, what do they expect the populace to do? They're following the lead. Some people are following that lead. It's disgraceful.
Yeah, and this did cross a line yesterday. I mean, I'm pro-Israel. Some people apparently hate me for that. That's their problem. And if they'd like to bring it to me, then we can have another conversation, because I've had about enough of people attacking Israel. But yesterday, there was an attack on the United States. I mean, the American flag was pulled down in front of Union Station, doused in gasoline, and set on fire. So I'm sick and tired of the attacks on Israel on a personal level and a political level, but it is escalating into an attack on the United States, and I think we do need to take it seriously. Democrats have foolishly imported the conflicts, the centuries-old conflicts of the Middle East into our own population. And, Chuck, I was surprised as I watched the video how many people appeared to be, and I don't know how you gauge this, but they appeared to be Native Americans, citizens who were engaged in pro-Palestinian protests, pro-Hamas protests. Where did that come from?
Well, if you watched, and I'm sure you did watch Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech yesterday, he refers to these crowds as Iran's useful idiots. And I thought that was a fabulous description. Most of these people do not understand the strife that exists in Israel with its neighbors. As I've said before, in 2005, Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza and gave them the chance to have their own leadership. And they chose Hamas. And people are not aware, and I'll bet you that those protesters are not aware, that from 2005 until today, almost 20 years later, Hamas still will not remove from its charter the call for the destruction of the state of Israel. When Democrats want to talk about a two-state solution, and there are some Republicans, but how do you have a two-state solution when one side says, from the river to the sea, we want to be free of all Jews? So these Americans that are chanting, these Native Americans that are out there chanting with other crazies, they don't understand these issues. What they should be able to do is count on responsible leadership to explain those issues. And instead of that, they got Tim Kaine and Kamala Harris boycotting the speech of a sitting prime minister trying to explain the peril that his country is now in. That's disgraceful, and people follow that. These are respected people in the country, like it or not, and they really did tremendous harm to our system and to America in general, and I hope that other leaders will step up and be able to point this out.
So Tim Kaine, our U.S. Senator, who is up for re-election this year, who also presents himself as some sort of foreign policy expert. I'm a little puzzled by that because other than playing his kazoo down in Guatemala, I'm not familiar with his experience internationally, but whatever. He skipped out on it yesterday?
He did skip out. He had a previously scheduled meeting at William and Mary College. I'm just amazed. And as you said, Tim Kaine serves on the Senate Armed Services Committee. He serves on the Foreign Relations Committee. You know, he's touted as a brilliant Harvard-trained U.S. senator. It's just mind-boggling to me that he showed sympathy to these protests. And that is what he did. He can say what he wants to say, and I read his excuse that it was a previously scheduled appointment. But his actions speak louder than his word. He disrespected Netanyahu by not being there and at least giving him the chance to hear what he had to say. He didn't do that, and he's helping to shape American foreign policy. It's scary.
What other members of the Virginia delegation showed up or skipped out? Do we know?
Well, Don Beyer, I read that Don Beyer skipped it, and frankly, you know, as a very proud Virginian, that saddened me beyond belief. But I have to say, the president of the U.S. Senate, Kamala Harris, the vice president, sitting vice president, skipped out on the speech. What in the world kind of message? I'll tell you what I read into that. There are battleground states where there are tremendous Muslim populations, and she's now running for president. And she decided it was more important to show sympathy to haters of our country so that she could curry favor with that population and try to obtain their votes. It's just shameful. That is, the founders are turning over in their graves.
Yeah, well, she's a lightweight too. She really doesn't have a clue what she's doing, and I hope that people will pay close attention if they're lulled into thinking, oh well, let's vote for Kamala Harris because she's black or because she's Indian or because she's a woman. I mean, you pick which card you want to play there from a racial perspective. You're not getting a bright individual. She's been successful in politics somehow, but she's also proven over and over again she's really not with it. Chuck Lessin, the vice chairman of the Virginia Israel Advisory Board. Always appreciate the chance to talk to you, Chuck. Please stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay.